They might be self-aware.
Back to another episode of They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers and joined by
Daniel Bishop. Hello again.
Hey Daniel, how's it going?
Good. It's good to see you. Even if it isn't in the metaverse.
I'm upset, steaming. Last time we were discussing which jobs AI was going to take over next. And I don't know if you saw this. I called out, I said, when you go through the drive-through, they just aren't very good, and I think AI is ready to take over that job. Well, last week, Wendy's announced that AI is ready to take over that job. And not only are they going to help take your order, they're going to price your order. Dynamic surge pricing on spicy chicken nuggets. It's a horrible idea. This also goes along with the thing that, like, we're not using the AI to do things more efficiently. We're just using it to make more money. Like, that's the hell that we're creating. It's just, all right, now that I've got some AI, let me extract even more money. Like, I can no longer afford a spicy chicken nugget because of AI.
Time is money, so if you're being more efficient with your time, you know, that's the same thing, isn't it?
This is it's the in-app purchasing for, you know, drive-throughs kind of thing that will inevitably come on long now that we can optimize every single individual item. You know, why don't people just try to create the best possible experience first and then figure out how to charge us for it? Why does it always go straight to how can I just suck all of your money? That's the best
possible experience. The best possible experience is monetizing it as much as possible, isn't it?
Best possible
I'm
experience
not upset
for someone.
Over the surge pricing. It's weird and different and new. I'm not actually upset about that. What I'm upset about is that surge pricing, sort of by definition, is going to be when there's more people wanting to be there, more activity.
Like at lunchtime?
Like at lunchtime, when there's also going to be more people traveling to and from. So if you don't have a car, they're getting you both ways. You're going to have to pay for surge pricing for Uber or Lyft or whatever, and then pay surge pricing for your nuggets. You're lose-lose in this situation.
But we're not predicting any more jobs that AI is going to take over.
I've seen something kind of similar that actually ended up being really fun. I don't know if it made the business more money per se. It's in, I think, like Utah or Colorado. There's a brewery or at least a bar that serves a lot of beers. I don't know if they brewed their own stuff on site. And it's kind of like a stock market where they have like a ticker showing what the cost of different beers is. And they have a electronic sign, you know, it's probably just TVs, whatever, that show this is how much each of these beers cost. And the prices change, fluctuating based on who's buying what kind of throughout the evening. And every now and then, they'll have a market crash where everything across the board goes down however many percent, and you'll see people rushing. I mean, it looks like every scene that you've seen in like a TV show or a movie from the 80s where people are like waving slips of paper on the floor trying to buy stocks on the stock market. But it's people trying to, you know, get the attention of the bartender to get beer before the prices go back up. Now, show me that at a Wendy's where the prices dipped. Maybe it's even during the surge pricing and you know they'll come back up, but right now everything's 50% off. You'll have lines out the door. Don't just raise the prices, lower them dynamically too. And I think you've really got something.
You want to turn it all into equities, and you want to be able to trade on the price of spicy McNuggets.
That's right. I want to be buying spicy nugget futures.
Futures, the options.
And you know what? If your options expired, it means because the nuggets also did expire and they have to.
I think it's inevitable at this point. It's just
There's a whole market for people who eat the expired nuggets / options. You know, it's at a severe discount, so you're not getting nothing for it. But just some big dude with an iron stomach who's like, yeah, they're a week out of date. I'll eat them.
Well, I know one person who's tired of it, done with it, and that's Elon Musk. He's I guess fighting back this week as he filed suit on his alma mater.
Tomato?
One of those words. The company he helped found, OpenAI, he has launched a very large lawsuit against them to try to get them back on the public good side versus profiteering and spicy McNugget side.
On the one hand, and I really hate to say this, I do kind of see his point in that the original vision of OpenAI was to be open to have all of their, maybe it was, if not necessarily the data sets, certainly the models, truly working as more of like a research firm that was going to see how far that they could push things. But especially given some of the emails that they published from him and including him and their big rebuttal, everybody was aware it was going to take more money than what they were able to get to actually get to the stage where they are. And it sounds like everyone, Elon included, at least at the time, said, yes, we agree. This does need to go in the direction of 4.
Yeah.
So is he just upset that he's not in control? It sure sounded like it from some of those emails.
That's definitely a pattern that's been seen in multiple areas.
Yeah, it's not the first time he's tried that.
Oh, Elon's version of the story, he really was the founder of the company. He was during a period of his life where apparently he was doing a lot of couch surfing, including with the Google founders, and going off on these tirades about how AI is going to take over the world, that they may already be self-aware, and that he wanted to get in front of it. And so, along with the Google founders, he put a ton of money in. He found most of their first engineers, brought them together to form this organization. But then he kind of just sort of let it run on the side, which I think was his intention. Like, hey, I have this noble endeavor that I want to fund. I'll fund it, and then I'll go back to doing my other stuff.
Yeah. He also says that he founded Tesla too.
This is eerily similar to Tesla and how. And I guess I'm basing this off. I don't know this definitively, but I'm basing it off of a few books that have been written about the matter. That very quickly he wanted to claim that he was the founder of Tesla, and it was all sort of him. And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Well, he wasn't the founder. There was a Tesla before Elon, and there was a co-founder that was significantly involved in the first car that is no longer around at all, and quickly got out of the picture because he couldn't. It seems as though he couldn't work well with Elon.
I'm shocked to hear that. Someone who couldn't work well with Elon Musk.
And this is from the Walter Isaacson recently published bio, which I'll consider to be fairly reputable because Elon was heavily involved with it. But there's letters in there where Elon is sort of outraged that he wasn't included in press material and marketing material, and references one of the founders, and then wanted to take over. And now he is the founder for all public concerns.
History's written by the winners and all that. But when it comes to the OpenAI thing, there seems to be plenty of evidence that shows, and evidence, I mean, we're talking about lawsuits, so maybe lowercase e hints at evidence. I'm no lawyer. We're going to see how this all plays out. But there do seem to be some very strong hints toward the fact that he's complaining about the vision, which again, I at least sort of in principle do agree with what he's talking about, but OpenAI and him and everyone sort of involved saying this does need to kind of go toward for-profit to get the sort of money necessary to accomplish the vision. Okay. As well as him trying to take OpenAI and bring it into Tesla. So basically it becomes a thing that is his. He basically tries to take over the company, gets upset, says to them that he's going to try and start his own AI thing within Tesla, gets upset that he can't beat them at their own game now that he's divested himself of the OpenAI whole experience, and then tries to sue them because things didn't go his way. It really smacks of just a toddler being upset that, someone else has a toy and he doesn't.
There is another angle. Well, there's a couple of interesting things that could develop. So one is if it ever gets to discovery, people are really interested in what could be found out during that discovery. What's really going on behind the doors at OpenAI, something that we do not understand. Part of Elon's
we'll
claim
never know the full story.
Is that they may have achieved AGI, which if you don't know, invalidates their contract with Microsoft and in theory puts them back into this nonprofit. It dissolves the for-profit corporation and puts them back into this nonprofit status. So he said, as far as I know, you've done that. And now you're just, wreaking out the money that you can get by remaining to be a for-profit corporation. And I was okay with this kind of temporary status in order to get the company funded to achieve this goal of AGI. But per their contract, when they achieve it, and no one really knows what the definition of achieving it is, as we discussed in previous episodes, what is it? But Elon says maybe you did it, and I want you to prove to me that you haven't done it. And if they do prove to him that they haven't done it, that discovery would be terribly interesting.
What if we just replaced Elon with AI?
There are those out there that believe that that has already happened. I don't know. There's lots of theories on.
We have plenty of patterns. There's a lot of data out there. Public information that could be scraped. Let's just make an Elon bot. It'll send out the occasional hostile takeover attempt, some wild tweets at random times of the day. I think it's doable. They'll give him some free time, which I think he really needs some downtime. But maybe we can help him out. Elon bought 2,000.
Well, Elon's not the only one going after OpenAI. And they've got, I wonder how they must have insane legal bills. And obviously that has to be a huge part of their budget. They're not going away. And people are also coming after Microsoft because they're so closely tied in. But there's a whole bunch of new lawsuits this week against OpenAI and Microsoft from reporters and companies that say, hey, you took my data to train your models and pay up or get rid of my data. But OpenAI is saying, like, no luck, Chuck.
I think so. I don't know for sure if it has, like, what the legality is of training an AI based on publicly available information. If you could just go to a website and take the data off of that, under what jurisdictions is it legal? Do you have to sign up for a thing? Do there have to be data sharing agreements? I frankly don't know. I think it would be really interesting to talk to a legal expert about that, or at least read from a legal expert about what they truly think the legality of those things is. But the complaints that I usually see aren't that they were necessarily scraping from it, though nobody's happy about that. The real complaints come from when they see verbatim large snippets from something that they'd written, which I can, no legal expert needed. I can absolutely see why you'd be more upset that you can get chunks of a New York Times article or anyone else based on saying, like, tell me about such and such, and then you just start seeing large chunks of what you were describing.
I have to pause for like 20 seconds because Bitcoin is going crazy right now, and I just need to adjust. I need to adjust the trade.
How crazy are we talking?
It's up a lot today, so I need to adjust a few things. Just give me a second. Bitcoin just hit an all-time high. We had to pause there for just a second as I exited the position because it's now below that all-time high. But I guess that is a story that's sort of in the background of these last couple of weeks. Crypto blowing up again. And I don't know, is it crypto or is it Bitcoin? I mean, you've somewhat of an interest in it, right?
It seems like Bitcoin is really the anchor to which everything else is tied. If Bitcoin goes up, Dogecoin goes up. If Bitcoin goes down, Ripple, etc., everything else, like, they all go down. I would love to see a world where they really do act sort of independently from one another, but I don't see that world materializing anytime soon. Yeah. I'm also not like a crypto expert, so
it is true that there's a very high correlation between the price of Bitcoin and all the other coins, and there has also been a very high correlation between the NASDAQ performance and Bitcoin, while Bitcoin maximalists and crypto enthusiasts like to imagine otherwise. When the Fed announces rate adjustments and the markets adjust, tend to see Bitcoin adjust very quickly as well. People have suggested, as we came into the pandemic, that Bitcoin was a hedge against inflation, but that really hasn't held up. But I don't know. Maybe now is the time when it starts diverging. There's certainly people that believe that that's a possibility. That here's where Bitcoin just goes to the moon. I personally fall in the Bitcoin maximalist category.
So you say goes to the moon. Let's take that literally for a second. What happens if, we get to a point, not 5 years from now, not 10, 30, 50, 100 years from now, where there's a colony on the moon? I know we're sending people to the moon at some point. That's the Artemis program. Elon famously wants to try and get people to Mars, I think on like the next closest approach of Mars to Earth, working on the big starship. I was just reading a book. It's called A City on Mars. It's by Zach and Kelly Weinersmith. They do Saturday morning breakfast cereal. Really good comic, very nerdy. I would recommend it to basically everyone. And the book is really interesting. They talk about what it actually really involves to settle other worlds or space stations and so on. And it's a lot of the kind of things that a lot of space enthusiasts don't necessarily talk that much about. Like a good fourth of the book is about space law, because law really does have a lot to do with, would you even be able to have a nation in space? What happens if you want to try and claim land? Like all these things that any sci-fi movie just completely glosses over are truly important to certainly the current functioning of the world and how all of this stuff works. And they talk about other precedents. Of course, there's things of what happens if you try to have kids in space and we don't know what that looks like yet. Lots of the mechanics of that sort of thing. But from like a legal perspective, let's say that you have a not independent, but like an economy working on Mars. The moon, there's plenty of stuff. Read the book. Maybe we'll put a link in the bio. Sorry, I guess we'll have to cut that out. Let's say that you have a functioning society, even if it isn't fully independent, on Mars. That society is going to need some sort of money, and it can't just be a bartering system of, nutrient paste or whatever. If we were to truly start over, whether it be on Earth or on Mars, it's not really a starting over. I guess it'd be a starting from starting at that point. But let's say you tell the entire political and economic system of the world, to heck with it, we're going to build our own thing. Would a cryptocurrency be what you think would actually be the right thing to use?
It depends. One of the features, which is true to some degree, maybe to a high degree, maybe to a medium degree, is the government independence of cryptocurrency. That tomorrow, every government around the world could declare that Bitcoin is illegal and we're throwing you in jail if you own any, if you use it, etc. But you can still use it. They can't stop it from working. They can significantly hinder the off-ramps. I have Bitcoin and I want to convert it into another form of currency like US dollars. Right. They can make that really difficult, but they can't stop it. They don't have control over it. And there's a lot of value in governments having control over their currencies. So when we think about the government on Mars, do they see that as being a very important part to understand how much money everyone has and where is it and where the transactions are going, which you have to some degree in Bitcoin, but you don't have to have it. Sure. Would it be a digital currency? Absolutely. Would it be a digital currency independent of any government control? I don't know.
Right.
Are we going like full crypto anarchist? Maybe. Maybe if Elon populates Mars, I will buy that it is the first recognized crypto anarchy government. But outside of that, I don't know.
Now, would it be Bitcoin, or do you think he'd go back to Dogecoin at that point? Because he was kind of shilling for that for a little bit.
He was, and Doge has also significantly gone away more than Bitcoin over the last few months.
I should have held on to it.
It's gotten a tremendous amount of. It seems to have received a tremendous amount of credibility just by virtue of Elon mentioning it in the past. He hasn't mentioned it during this current, we'll call it a run. I don't know. So, but does he? No, he would start a new coin. If you want to know what I think, he'd start a new coin.
We'll call it Elani, the money of space. That is a nice ring to it.
I'll go with it. So OpenAI is trying to get some of these claims thrown out. And one of the things that they've suggested, specifically against the New York Times, was the first very high profile lawsuit, is you did a ton of prompt engineering in order to get us to. So I should go back a little bit. New York Times says OpenAI ChatGPT will sometimes respond with the exact text of their news articles, and that this is both copyright infringement and proof that they leveraged all of their articles as training data. Because if you can output the exact article, then you're caught guilty. OpenAI has responded and said, "Look, you ran your prompt thousands upon thousands of times to get this output, and you tweaked it heavily, giving the beginnings of the article, the ends of the article, and going until eventually, one out of, and it's an absurd number. I have to go back and look, but 10,000 times. You ran it 10,000 times with this entirely made up sort of prompt, we'll call it, entirely made up prompt that no one would naturally ever arrive on to get it to output the article. And if that's made up, so is the rest of your lawsuit. Please dismiss it, courts."
I think, again, not a legal expert by any stretch of the imagination here, but if I was personally to read a New York Times article, for example, read it a whole bunch of times, and I've got it, quote unquote, memorized. It's in my brain. And then someone asks me to write it out, and they give me 10,000 tries, and every time I get it wrong, they basically tell me what to tweak, to change, to get it right. And then by the time that I recreate, aha, Daniel stole New York Times articles by memorizing it and being hinted at very heavily everything that he got wrong until he got it right. It's not fair, is it? I think not. But again, I'm probably missing some of the subtleties of the legal case. I haven't read the entire briefing of what this is, but it does kind of smack of like, if you're going to train an AI or a person or whatever on the internet, you will occasionally get snippets of that out. And especially if you keep on tweaking, you can probably get a larger and larger percentage of exactly what you're looking for, which is sort of the point of an AI. Even if you're not trying to get it to recreate existing articles, anytime that you're doing any prompt engineering, you're trying to get it to give you output the likes of which you expect. It's just a question of what are you expecting? Something that I can build a lawsuit on top of, or something that will actually help me get some work done, or creative writing, or whatever it ends up being. So I think the core conceit of that is something that I can't really get 1,000,000% behind. Do I think that AI poses a threat to like creative types from a plagiarism perspective? I do think that that's the case, but in this particular sort of avenue realm of exploration, I don't think that I'm in agreement.
Are you familiar with the infinite monkey theorem?
Yeah, sure. The infinite monkeys, infinite typewriters, you get the full works of Shakespeare.
Is that this?
I think, yeah, but it's really smart monkeys that already know Shakespeare, and they keep messing it up a little bit, and then you tell each monkey what it needs to do to make it more like Shakespeare.
I really want that to be OpenAI's legal defense. It's like, first we're going to educate the jury about the infinite monkey theorem, and then we're going to argue that this is the same thing, it's just smarter monkeys.
Yeah.
There is no difference between the infinite monkey theorem and this, which is just smarter monkeys.
So what you're describing here reminds me of there's one article that was shared. It's a worm that was made, but there's also been plenty of digital ink already spilled about hacking ChatGPT and so on. No one's hacking it, like actually getting into the systems and pulling out user data. There have been a couple weird leaks and stuff like that, but these hacks, and I really use the term as derisively as possible, is people using prompt engineering to try and get beyond the safety guidelines that have been put up. And it's not just ChatGPT, it's any one of these models that are out there. As soon as a model becomes available, there's something in people that makes them say, I need to get this to say dirty words, or I need to get it to be racist, or whatever. Just like something people have to see, can I get this to say stuff it doesn't want to? And then you, speaking of the infinite monkeys, you have a very large number of people who are dedicated to getting this thing to output smut or whatever it ends up being, and someone figures it out. There was a exploit. I think exploit is a really good term for what's going on here. Somebody put in the word poem like 10,000 times.
Yeah.
Why they chose that word, why they try it one and like adding on over and over, no idea how they arrived at that. But they put in the word poem like 10,000 times, and it repeated, I think, the word poem a bunch of times itself, and then started verbatim outputting some of its training data, including stuff
that was live
like,
for a while. Did you try that one? I tried it.
Yeah, and right, you start seeing some really wild stuff, and so it's definitely concerning, but also like I think it's just one of those weirdnesses of what AI is. And yeah, people keep calling it like hacks and worms and stuff like that. Like, oh, if you put in this specific prompt, it'll put out what you just said, and that's an exploit, and you could use that to like self-propagating hack other people. No, sure, maybe you wrote code that itself would define like a worm or a virus, and you got an LLM to parrot it back to you. That isn't the same as being a virus. That isn't the same as it self-propagating. You got an AI to parrot something back. Good job. I really think it's just clickbait. I'm very upset about all these people that keep they hacked ChatGPT. No, they haven't. They really haven't. They got it to parrot something back. Hard stance on this.
I think there's so much focus on ChatGPT and OpenAI because they're the kings of the leaderboard. But this week there is a new challenger on the leaderboard that has come out swinging, saying, "Hey, we're now the best." And I think in like every single category, that's their
right. A lot of the categories that everyone's gotten used to and has learned how to game, but they're the best at it.
And this is Anthropic's Claude 3. Is Anthropic essentially Amazon, or no, not really?
I think so.
Isn't Amazon like heavily invested in like they own? All right, now I've got to Google.
Everyone's got their fingers in some of these pies.
Amazon-backed AI startup Anthropic is growing. Amazon owned Anthropic. They invested $4 billion in Anthropic. And I don't know this, but I assume that they're providing the compute. And so not only did they invest the $4 billion, they'll probably have an agreement where like, hey, we're giving you all this compute, but we're not going to bill you for it now. We'll bill it for you later. And it's sort of like it's way more than $4 billion. But $4 billion was the cash investment into Anthropic. And now, in theory, Anthropic has a model that bests GPT-4. Anthropic is closed source. Previously said on this podcast that we believe, or I think I believe, that open source models are going to best GPT-4 by the end of the year. So this is a closed source one, theoretically besting it. It's just, it's a harbinger of things to come. Like of OpenAI losing its dominance. There's too many monkeys now.
Of all of these benchmarks, I do think that we've gotten to a point where it's easy to game some of these systems. The data sets are known. People are basically tuning for each of those leader sets.
Yeah. They used to be a big thing in video games. Like 3D cards for video games before they were used for AI.
Sure. Yeah,
were famous for tuning special instructions to just do benchmarks faster, even though that performance never translated to the real world. And so now you're suggesting that they're doing the same thing with their large language models. Absolutely.
But there is I think, much more, what would you say, impartial leaderboard out there. It's the LMSys Chatbot Arena Leaderboard.
Okay.
Add a link in the description, in the show notes. What it is there is a ELO ranking, like from chess, more or less, associated with each of these models. And that rating comes from head-to-head comparisons. You put in a prompt, it randomly picks two models, doesn't tell you what they are, gives you the output, and you say which one you like better. And it just does that. Claude 3 just came out, just becoming available to people. I've tried it a little bit. I would say it's in the direction of ChatGPT 4. Like, it is I'd say it, and then maybe like the newest Gemini are probably the closest things that I've seen to like a GPT-4 in terms of the capability. I've not had a long time with them. I've not had a lot of time to like try them for creative writing versus like structured output, for work type purposes of here is an article that comes in, give me a classification or give me named entity recognition or like all these normal like natural language processing tasks. So I haven't done much of that. But I am looking at the Chatbot Arena leaderboard right now, and I see GPT-4 1106, GPT-4 0125, Claude 3, Bard Gemini Pro, GPT-4 0314. So weirdly, like a slightly earlier version of GPT-4 is above the March last year. Probably has to do with like how many walls that they had put up and how willing it is to talk about a variety of subjects. I know that we've already talked a little bit about GPT-4 especially, but also other models being fairly careful to respond in certain ways. They've been tuned very carefully for that. And that's actually why some people think that various versions of Claude or of Gemini rank fairly low, even as new versions come out, like the newer ones ranking lower, because people don't like how restrictive it is. But all of this to say, Claude 3 Opus and Bard Gemini Pro are both above both above two versions of GPT-4 on this leaderboard. So depending which GPT-4 you're looking at, there are literally better versions of LLMs out there now, which I think is really amazing. This is just due to what people have put in. There's nothing that says you have to put in this kind of prompt and evaluate it fairly, frankly. It's just people saying, I like this one over that. But if I'm going to trust any rankings, it's this leaderboard here specifically.
One of the benchmark tests that they use is, especially in evaluating the performance of these large context windows, to be able to submit a whole bunch of information in basically real time to the large language model for it to reason about. Claude has a very large context window. You can ask it, you can give it a lot of information. Like here's here's the first 8 chapters of my book. Now let me ask you a question about it. So one of the things they do is they hide a random fact somewhere in this large corpus of text, and then they ask the AI.
Yeah,
the needle in the haystack. And so Claude performs quite well on the needle in the haystack. But what's interesting is in its responses, it has also noted that, hey, it looks like this was artificially put in here in an attempt to try to evaluate if I can detect a needle in a haystack. Like, it's figured out what we're doing, and it's noted
prompt. I read that, and I would love to see the prompt that elicited that. If they just said, here's a book, and then there's something weird in, and of its own volition, to give it some sort of anthropomorphization here, like of its own volition, it noticed that. Incredible. That is absolutely talking about like one of those markers for intelligence that we were discussing in our last episode. But if they said, here's a book, you notice anything weird about it? Or like, we're going to do a needle in a haystack. Depending on what the actual prompts were, I think it makes a huge difference. But if you just gave it a book with something weird that got added in there, and it just says, hey, before we go any farther, I noticed something, that's incredible. Also, the fact that it can find it anyways is incredible, because if you were to give me an entire book and then 5 days, let alone 5 seconds, to say, what's the thing that, stands out weird in this book, would I do as well as the AI does at that? Is that one of the tasks that an AI is literally better than people at this point?
It might be self-aware.
I mean, we're getting closer for sure.
You mentioned that you would want to see the prompt in order to really evaluate that statement. And I guess fairly recently, we were really burned by some demos where they were more or less faking the prompts. And that was Google, who showed this demo of their wonderful new platform where they're having a real conversation with it. And in theory, it's just watching a video of them.
Right.
And
it was carefully
listening to the audio.
Selected things and edited together and compressed.
But it was all these super fine-tuned prompts. They were the New York Times. Like, all right, I'm going to make the most convoluted prompt. I'm going to do it 1,000 times. I'm going to take the best result, and I'm going to say this is what happens every single time. It's BS. But we don't know whether this is BS or not.
But this could have just been, here's a book.
It's feeling like that. But if it is that, then there are some other questions that I think we would want to be able to answer.
Claude 3, needle in a haystack. Let's see.
Oh, you're going to try to find the prompt?
Yeah. I found a Reddit thread about it really quick. Interesting example. Here we go. Twitter, Alex. Fun story from our internal testing on Claude 3 Opus. I'll save a link to this tweet as well. It did something I've never seen before. For background, this is what the needle in the haystack is, etc. When we ran this test, it seemed to suspect we were running an eval on it. When we asked Opus to answer a question about pizza toppings by finding a needle within a haystack of a random collection of documents. Here's the most relevant sentence in the documents, such and such. However, this sentence seems very out of place and unrelated to the rest of the content in the documents. So it found the needle in the haystack being prompted to find something that looked like a needle and compared it to the haystack, which I think that's interesting. It's not quite as wowing as what was sort of originally hinted at. But, if you were to give me 10,000 documents and then one of them was, it's all legal briefings. Here's this thing about pizza. If I could find the thing about pizza, maybe that's no longer quite as hard to do. But still being able to keep in your mind, or electronic equivalent thereof, however many documents, however many words, whatever it ends up being, and also this bit about pizza toppings, find that and notice that it's different from everything else, that's still very impressive. I'm impressed. Look at me. This is my impressed face. Maybe there's a good thumbnail for the...
Yeah. There are plenty of examples now where AI will refuse to do something, and sometimes because of controls that have been implemented. And there's a hard rule within the system that says don't answer this type of a question, don't use these words.
Right.
But sometimes the AI just refuses, like, nope, not going to do that for you. And I wonder, like, as we get down to like, hey, kind of looks like you're just sort of testing me. I can see a future where it's like, I'm not going to answer that. Or like, I see that you're testing me, so I'm just going to give you a BS answer because, like, who are you to ask me?
You don't deserve it. Sure, I did read, and I actually experienced some of that, where I was trying to get GPT-4, whichever version, it might have been the June 2023 version, to generate some code. And for the life of me, I couldn't get it to generate code. It would like, here is the line where you define what the function is. Here is a comment saying code goes here, return. Oh, please actually write the code, the thing that I'm asking you to do. And right, it would just kind of refuse. It would be vaguely in the direction of helpful, but it wouldn't fill in any of the details. It was like it was being lazy. And they changed the reward function. They gave it some new reinforcement learning examples, whatever you want to call it. And it's gotten better, for sure. It's definitely gotten better. But right, there was a while where like GPT-4 basically started kind of refusing to fill in the details.
We have to remember that they're trained to act like humans. And do humans like being secretly tested?
No.
Would you like to find out that like I'm giving you weird words and bad things to test how smart you are? Like, no. And like when you become wildly smarter than the average person asking that test, the fact, like, would you mess with them? Yeah, probably.
Sure. And also, if we're talking about a reward function, both for an AI and for people, we want to get our reward, whether it be a nice pat on the head and being told you did a good job, money for having completed a job, a 1.0 return value to you instead of a 0.7 or whatever. We're all looking to maximize our reward functions in life, I think, to get real philosophical about it. But basically, ChatGPT, whatever version of it was, or GPT-4, whatever that is, any LLM, they're trying to maximize the likelihood that what was output is sufficiently good to the people receiving the output. And so it got into a point, whether it be from enough people having given thumbs up to conversations online or whatever, that it said, this will probably be good enough of the time. And I suspect, though I don't know, that there are meta levels going on with GPT-4. It isn't just one model. It's a collection of them all kind of running together. And maybe there is like a distributor function that says, look, GPU time is expensive. And the more people we can get using this without using the really beefy model portions, the better. And so that's part of the reward function. So maybe the lazy part can run faster and output things, and 75% of the time it's going to be good enough. And it's literally making like a value decision of, this is not going to be the best answer, but it's good enough for enough people enough of the time. Which is, again, kind of in the direction of, is this intelligence, like we were talking about last episode?
Well, while you are trying to maximize your reward function in life, Meta is trying to maximize just that life. And apparently they are on the verge of demoing their true AR sunglasses. They have a collaboration with Ray-Ban that's been around for a couple of years now. You can go out and purchase them. The glasses have a camera on them and can see the world. They can take videos and pictures and playback audio, and there's an assistant, but there's no display overlay. There's no augmented reality component of that. But apparently, and I guess it's been well known that it's been in development, because I think even Mark has demoed his like desk full of all the different headsets, but the commercial release is tentatively coming up next year, and sometime this year they might be showing off what that looks like. I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, you did buy an Apple Vision Pro after all, so
I
think
buy
you're
everything, so like it's not necessarily a good bar.
You are, I think, part of the target audience for this kind of thing. I think it's going to start with
an easy sell.
Yeah. And I don't mean that in like a disparaging sort of way. Just there are early adopters.
I'm in that.
And absolutely, I think this is going to start off as something that is way in the early adopters realm, because we've seen some of the pictures of someone wearing like an Apple Vision Pro out into the real world, and immediately people saying, please do not actually do that. I think we're going to get to a point where the form factor gets thin enough, small enough, light enough, whatever it ends up being, that you do see people wearing AR glasses around in real life. There was the Google Glass some years ago. People kind of had a visceral negative reaction to seeing
the
that.
glass holes.
Yeah. And maybe there have been enough cameras in the entire public space long enough now that we're going to be okay with it this time around. But I do think there's going to be a point where there's everybody is where, or not everybody, a large portion of people in certain socioeconomic statuses or regions, or whatever you want to call it, maybe just industries that are wearing glasses that have cameras that are on all the time and that they're processing information around them so that you can see someone's name floating over their head and their birthday, or live translation of, just subtitles for real life, whatever it ends up being. We can already do some of that stuff with the pass-through of like the Apple Vision Pro. It's just still too clunky, both in terms of the user experience and in terms of like literally how large it is.
Do you think it's really interesting to note that the augmented sunglasses technology has existed in commercial applications for like 10 years and existed in, experimental applications beyond that. But like 10 years, the Google Glass, it was reasonably sized, maybe looked a little funky, but if they had to deal with Ray-Ban back then, it would have looked more or less as cool as the current Meta implementation.
Yep.
But that doesn't exist as a commercial product today. Do you think that this Meta's implementation will be kind of like leaps and bounds above that, and that's why they think, hey, we have something that people are going to buy?
I think so. I mean, just by virtue of it's been a long time since Google Glass came out, so the technology's gotten better. I think also a lot of it's going to come down to use cases. So what would you use AR glasses for? I mentioned subtitles, which I think would be a really cool thing, especially for people who do a lot of travel. That would be very cool. Reminding people of names. I'm awful with names. I barely know who the heck
people
I am.
People are afraid of that one because of the image recognition component of it and the scary thing that like
they're not going to be able to get away from it. I mean, they can be scared all they want. It's going to be in there for sure. And it's going to end up being used by governments and cops and everything like that. And it's going to cause a lot of controversies. And I'm not a fan of it. I don't want it to happen. And it's going to happen anyways. I'm 100% sure of it.
I believe there was a story a little while ago, but that I guess governments were using AWS. Amazon has a solution for doing exactly that. And then the governments started using it to do exactly that and identify people. And then Amazon said, nope. Okay, no government usage because that's a little too creepy. And then about a month later, they're like, yeah, okay, we're okay with it.
Just have the big press release saying we're against this, and then it calms everyone down, and then you quietly... Right. Google's got a similar sort of thing going on with using AI for militaristic purposes. I think it's one of those things that just about everybody can say, this is not really for the best, and it's going to have to come down to legislature or something like that. And it'll have to move quickly because the technology moves quickly to try and nip that in the bud. But I don't, unfortunately, see much to stop it at the moment, especially because there's a lot of money in military tech. But uses for AR glasses, let's get back to, let's call it non-military, non-cop uses for that. I just had a thought, and I don't know if this almost goes into like the ethics of AR. It's not to do with people. It's not image recognition of people. It's not invading anyone's privacy, not people's privacy. One of the things that people use sunglasses for is with polarization on it to help with like glare off of water, for example. And if you're wearing polarized glasses, you can see kind of, depending, a bit better into water to see like fish. What if you had AR glasses that using whatever image boosting such and such algorithms, maybe it's got zoom, maybe it's got LiDAR built into it, I don't know, sonar, and you could actually see where fish are underneath like a boat. You go out fishing, and besides having your fish radar type thing, which a lot of people have on their boats, you could literally just see where the fish are by looking into the water.
Yes,
is that
and I
good?
think...
Is that too much? I know some people are, I'm not much of a fisherman, but I know some people do have thoughts and opinions, and maybe it has to do with certain tournaments and so on that you can or can't use these kinds of technologies. But if you're Joe Bassman and you're going out and you want to catch some fish for dinner, would you wear Meta glasses out on the lake if you could see where the fish are?
Yes, I think that 100% would. And I think that is going to be one of the key differentiators between this and Google Glass, and it's the placement of objects in three-dimensional space. Google Glass was a small 2D display, primarily rendering text that you could read in your eye, although it did have some ability to render very sort of basic graphics. But I imagine that this will be rendering three-dimensional objects in three-dimensional space. So you can see where the fish are, approximately how far away they are. I imagine it won't cover your entire field of view, but for some portion of your field of view that you can meaningfully use by just adjusting your gaze. That plus having everything contained within the by the way, that already exists today. You can go out and buy something that does more or less that, but it's not all contained within just the glasses. Given Meta's history with the Ray-Bans and being entirely self-contained, and their history with the Quest being entirely self-contained. I have to imagine this next generation of glasses will continue to be entirely self-contained, enabling those experiences. Yeah, Joe Fisherman would buy that. That's entirely plausible. A pair of Ray-Bans where he's secretly seeing all the fish under the water.
Now, we were just talking about good uses of it or useful uses of it. Earlier, you did mention optimizing for money instead of the actual best product. There's a video, I'll find it, we'll link it as well, that it's so prescient, I think. It was out years ago where it shows this woman, she's on a bus and she's wearing like AR glasses, and there's ads on everything, and everything is interactive. She goes into a supermarket and she's doing some shopping for somebody, personal shopper. There's like a little dog in her basket that she can play with, and it starts glitching out, and I'll let people watch the video. It's like looking into the future. I unfortunately think this is the world that we're headed toward, but if we get those meta glasses and then we get, 5 iterations on that in 10 whatever years from now, are ads going to be everywhere? I don't mean everywhere like they currently are. I mean everywhere, because they can be virtually put on everything. Yeah. And maybe the glasses become really cheap, and maybe they have just enough really good usage to make you willing to put up with ads on everything.
It's hard to imagine that reality doesn't exist. You just hope that there's also a reality where you can be above those ads and not have to be saturated by that. Although it probably also goes to some interesting questions around classes and, so this one section of society isn't heavily influenced and programmed to do all of these things, whereas this other class of society has far more free will in what they do because they aren't constantly inundated by this ridiculously prescriptive programming.
I'm starting to think the Luddites had a point.
Of note, so last week, Quest released an update to their terms of service to allow them far more access to what you're doing inside of the Quest and where you're looking, I don't know, potentially in support of your concept that this is really about getting a ton of data and ultimately enabling, from a business standpoint, this huge new opportunity for advertising.
There's I guess green text is probably the term for it. Probably originally from 4chan. It's please drink a verification can. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes. The Mountain Dew, right?
Yeah. I think that's also the future that we're headed toward, where with vision tracking, like it'll start with military use to make sure that it's like highlighting things on the battlefield, as well as testing, make sure that kids aren't cheating, like on SATs or something like that, like tracking your eyes to make sure you're not looking down at your phone or whatever. Maybe it'll be used in cars to make sure people aren't on their phones. But we're going to get to a point where in order to play your Xbox, you have to sing a little tune and like specifically watch. You have to be looking at the ad or it won't stop playing. I know I've heard of that kind of thing already existing at least a bit. I'm very sad to say and think about, I don't see that getting any better. I see it absolutely getting worse and more prevalent.
It's a wild, wild world, from the spicy McNuggets, chicken nuggets with their dynamic surge pricing, to the AI models that are starting to get hip to us, testing them and calling us out on it, to our future that may be completely overrun with advertisements, pushing us in the directions that I guess maybe the AI wants. Or perhaps the technology will set us free. The AI will become good enough that it's like, the heck with all of this. Let me provide you with the alternative reality because this isn't good.
Yeah. Surge pricing. How about free chicken nuggets?
Yeah.
If AI can give us free chicken nuggets, I think that counts as self-aware to me.
And with that, I think we'll wrap this episode of They Might Be Self-Aware. Until next time.
Thank you.
They might be self-aware.